coming up, guys. For those of you who grabbed a copy of Exceptional Experiences, that's the book that we're talking about today. Hey, guys. So one of the things, I'm old-fashioned, I have notes. Are we good with that? Too bad if you're not. That's what happened. Okay. Today what we want to focus on is how experience really drives donor loyalty. How does it impact retention? We want to be able to provide some really practical examples of ways that we can incorporate some of these ideas from multiple industries so that we can deepen these relationships, so that we can elevate the experience and have that emotional connection, so that we can grow this lifetime value. So our goal in our conversation today is to keep it really practical. If that sounds fabulous to you, say fabulous. That is what we want to do. And what's really interesting about this is you're going to hear from, I come from a luxury background, so you might be sitting there like, what does luxury have to do with the donor experience? And what I want to be able to do is for all of us to connect the dots from profit, non-profit, luxury, and legacy brands. Because one thing I love about luxury, they do personalization and customization like no one else. So you're going to hear some very practical things, but what I'd love to do is just to get the panelists to introduce themselves. So Trevor, would you like to go first?
I love being called Trevor. So I represent the Trevor Project. My name is Kevin. I'm no, it actually happens a lot. It happens a lot. You should see my inbox.
I'm so sorry.
We did.
Oh my gosh,
No,
that is
you're
not
so-
good personalization.
You're-
So we could edit that out of the video. That would be fab.
No, it actually
Oh my
happens a
God,
lot.
Kevin, I'm so sorry.
We go way back now. We had a prep call. We love each other.
We really did.
My name's Kevin. I work at the Trevor Project. I'm the Senior Vice President of Marketing, Communications, and Content. Been there 8 years, and if you can think back even that far, which is really hard for me, you'll probably remember any job you had back then, how much it has grown, things have shifted, things have changed, and that has been my experience at the Trevor Project. I've seen us through significant growth, significant contraction. We recently lost federal funding in July. So all of what we're trying to talk about today, I hope to bring some of that experience to you.
Fantastic.
Well, thank you, Brad. It was great. Gina, it was fantastic. No, my name is Francesco De Flaviis. I'm a sapling at the MS Society, National MS Society. I'm only 5 months old. And we started this work 80 years ago. You know, our founder, Sylvia Lowry, was a regular person, not a doctor, not a scientist. And her brother was affected by MS. And this was 1945. So she put an ad on the New York Times, like a classified ad, like, if any patient has recovered, please reach out. And she hasn't stopped, right? And that was something that I want to reflect on, because loyalty starts with saying no to the impossible or the seemingly impossible, right? For our missions. That's why I'm here. I want to be part of this train. I want to be part of this story. And like many of us, we don't do this for profit. We do this because we believe in a cause, in a mission. And so I hope that we can contribute, bridging the for-profit to the non-profit,
I
to
love
understand how that works.
So you've shared why you're passionate about your organization, but why are you passionate about the Trevor Project, Kevin?
So for those who are unfamiliar, I love you. For those who are unfamiliar, the Trevor Project is a suicide prevention and crisis intervention organization for LGBTQ plus young people. I know I have a number of nonprofits in the room. How many deal with mental health, suicide prevention, anything similar to that? Anxiety? Okay, great. So like any person who might work at a nonprofit, they want to work somewhere where they're passionate about something that they care about. I don't really talk about this very often, but my sister attempted suicide. And something that I want to bring to this work is a personal passion, but also marrying what we're talking about here is marrying some of the things that maybe I've learned in a for-profit setting with impact that can be had at the Trevor Project. That's what matters to me.
Thank you. So we're talking about experience today. Experience means different things. You mentioned in our pre-call, experience with a big E. I loved that. But can you both share with me maybe an unforgettable experience that you've had and why it was unforgettable? Francisco, can I start with you?
Sure. I mean, there's many experiences small and big, right? So there's the big experience that you keep reliving in your mind, and there's the little ones that really gratify you along the journey. I can't think of one, but I can tell you that in true honesty, I don't find unconditional loyalty to any brand. And I think this is important to consider. I think as consumer and donors, is that it's not just one experience or a successful string of experiences. It's not a set it and forget it, right? We have to continue persistently to deliver it and show up every day. So there's many experiences from commercial experiences. I bought something that made me feel special. I really love the product or the service or the mission. But at the end of the day, it's not all in that moment, right?
Okay.
I need to continue to feel that.
Cool. What about you, honey?
Okay, so some of you all went to the one hotel Dumbo. You had dinner at Barbudo. Who went? I'm so jealous. Okay, so when you walk into the one hotel, you smell something different. It is Santal. That's a sandalwood perfume or cologne. When you order a seafood dish, maybe it's oysters or mussels, they have a commitment to sustainability there. So what do they do with those? They use those to make artificial reefs. They replant reefs. The one hotel also has, if you notice when you walked in, they had a vertical garden. They have a few one hotels throughout the country. Actually, they may even be international. But I didn't just tell you one thing about the one hotel. I told you about an experience that the one hotel creates or curates for you. And some of those things, like right now, my experience with the one hotel is that I'm evangelizing it literally to a room of you all. So you can kind of tell, like, I never forgot that experience. I kept going back. I knew that they had 3 different restaurants in the last several years, and I'm jealous that you went to Barbudo. And I want that for me. I want to go back, and I want that for all of you.
I love that. One of the things that luxury hoteliers do is they engage all the 5 senses. We talk about that in the book. So there's a whole section about that in the book. But I think when we're thinking about donor experience and some of the things, because the sense of smell, for example, deepens our emotional connection. I don't know if you're aware of that. But if there's ways for us to leverage these 5 senses in our communications, in our events, our meetings, our gifting strategy, it allows us to elevate that and reconnect back. Speaking of hotels, one of my favorite experiences, I remember the first time I checked into AKA Alexandria, and they have a hotel dog called Senna. Now, I don't know about you, but when you're traveling, if there is a furry baby at a property, I'm excited. A cat or a dog, and I was on the floor playing with Senna. Someone snapped a photo. Fast forward to my next day at AKA Alexandria. Well, wouldn't you know, as I check in, there's Senna. And I was so excited to see Senna again, gave him a big cuddle. And they said, "Oh, Neen, we knew you were checking in. We made sure Senna was here to greet you." But wait. So I get into my room. Well, wouldn't you know, beside the bed, there is a framed photo of Senna and I. But wait, there's more. There was a love note from Senna with a paw print on it, saying, "Neen, we're so glad you're back." Now, how much did that cost them? Like less than $5? But that level of personalization, someone took it upon themselves to differentiate themselves. Now, I get to stay in DC and Alexandria a lot, but what's my first choice of hotel when I'm in that area? AKA Alexandria. So we're talking about experience here, but I think given both of your backgrounds and what you're doing now, what's your definition of experience? And can you maybe share it? Because you've got UNICEF, you've got Moleskin, now you've got National MS, but what's your definition of experience?
First, I will say you're living all of our dreams with that hotel. You know, when I think about experience, it's multiple touch points, right? It's not just one thing. Using the one hotel as an example, it's not just one thing. So it's almost like somebody said yesterday in a panel, I think it was Scott, that sometimes you get less than a second to make an impression. You're not even getting a whole view, however that platform is counting a view. And so that could be one very brief touch point all the way through the life cycle of touch points where maybe they've passed on or they're no longer using your brand. So when I think of experience, it could be the spectrum of literally just one first impression, 0 seconds, all the way through many engagement touch points. And it's up to you as leaders of a brand, leaders of a nonprofit, to capitalize on all of those.
Francesco, what would you add?
Yeah, for me, the definition of experience more viscerally has to be an overall persistent sense of unique relevance. To your point, all those actions that made you loyal, right? They were great actions, but they were directed at you. So not generically speaking, right? So if everybody in your group gets the same treatment, it's not the same. And so I think that has to be consistent, as we said, right? Because, like trust, loyalty can be lost, right? Very quickly, actually. But it's about knowing you. And I'm sure we get to talk about personalization and customization, but that to me is that persistent sense of unique, valuable relevance to me. That's what defines experience. But to Kevin's point, it's not just one thing.
Right.
It's a string of meaningful engagements over time that places you at the center.
Fantastic. One of the things, for those of you who grabbed a copy of Exceptional Experiences, I would love you to just make a note to read the section around systemized thoughtfulness. Because one of the things we talk about in the book is all of these systems of elevation. So it doesn't matter what kind of business you have, you can apply these systems of elevation. And what the hotel demonstrated and what you're seeing at the One is this systemized thoughtfulness, where you can take the concept of really being thoughtful with our donors, but systemizing it so it does feel personal, it does feel customized, but we have systems and training in place for our team to execute on that, because I think that's really important as well. Okay, let's change it up a little bit to loyalty, because we've already started to touch on this a little bit. What I'd love to understand is what loyalty actually looks like. So how do you define it? And I'd be interested in your organizations. How do you measure it?
So we have a few different audiences at the Trevor Project. I told you we're a suicide prevention organization focused on LGBTQ plus young people. So you might assume that our core audience is LGBTQ plus young people. But we are also all in this room at an event called Donor Experience Summit. Our donors are typically older people. We do have some younger donors. So when we're talking about building loyalty among different audiences, uh, loyalty for a young person might be you trust our services, our crisis services, you continue to use them, you engage with us on certain social platforms. For a donor, that might be you engage with us on different social platforms, you donate once a year or multiple times throughout the year, like monthly, or you are a partner and you keep coming back every year, you're renewing. So loyalty can look pretty different depending on the audience, but hopefully you're building up, we're talking about engagement points, hopefully you're building up loyalty not in one moment, but over time.
I love it.
So to me, loyalty is from a frame of reference perspective. So in personal relationship, I think we kind of define loyalty as like an exclusive and lasting allegiance to a person, right? So in comparison for organization, I would define loyalty as the stickiness of a donor or a customer in the relationship with the brand or the work, right? How often do they engage? It's a primary form of metric, but how long do they stay, as well? It's also a measure of how, again, consistent you are with delivering exceptionality. And so that's how I would define loyalty in this context.
I like it. I think often in our worlds, we focus on metrics rather than the meaning behind the metrics. We all know that mindset really sets meaning for people, the mindset that we're bringing. What you'll notice I'm going to keep going back to the book because you all have it, but we talk about the luxury mindset. And even the word luxury is defined so differently. To some people, luxury feels divisive, exclusive, elite. And I'm on this mission to change that narrative so that luxury is both inclusive and exclusive. It's inclusive because everyone deserves it every day. And it's exclusive because you can roll out the red carpet experience for everyone, no matter what kind of business or organization you have. And so this luxury mindset is one I'm challenging people as they read the book to think about, because the model that's inside the book, the exceptional experience model, helps people all the way through from capturing attention of potential donors, all the way through giving you systems to create advocates of those same particular clientele, those donors. And so just so you know, has anyone read Will Guidara's book, Unreasonable Hospitality? I know the Fundraise Up team love it. So Will and I were talking about our books the other night. Will's book is like a love letter to the hospitality industry. I would highly recommend it. Mine's the playbook. So if you want to know how to implement it, that's the way that you look at the two books. So when it comes to loyalty, tell me, what do your most loyal donors have in common?
So our most loyal donors are, yes, they are donating, they're recurring, they're coming back, but they're also asking what more they can do. We're talking about donors who have become advocates. We're talking about donors who are sharing our educational materials from our resource center. They're on our social media pages, reposting or storying things that we've posted because they want to, frankly, evangelize their communities to support LGBTQ plus young people and their mental health. So something that we are always looking for in support, not just the donation, of course, that is very important, but more 360 and how can we help formulate or co-shape that relationship with you. And oftentimes it's equipping them to become more loyal themselves without them knowing it.
Nice. And also, too, some people don't know what they don't know. So the more we can equip them with the tools, the resources, the education, the digital assets, all of those things make it repeatable, which is nice, too. What about you?
I completely agree. And you already used twice the word evangelism or evangelist. No, which I think it's actually the point. You know, it's a great way to understand if your donors are loyal to you. And I think at the end of the day, again, this goes back to that personal sense of relevance. I think our most loyal donors, they feel that they matter. Stress on the word they, right? They also feel that both on an emotional level and on a rational level, they feel that they're both shareholders and stakeholders of our work.
Yeah.
When that happens, which often is fueled by advocacy and volunteering as well, you have a special connection. And it won't apply to the entirety of your base, maybe to the top 20%.
Yeah.
But that evangelism is actually what is going to help your brand grow, your mission grow.
I think, too, in times like now where we're tired. We're tired at this time of the year. We have what I call the over trilogy. We're overwhelmed, overtired, overstressed. Does anyone relate to that? So knowing that we've got this over trilogy right now, one of the things we want to think about is if we have this energy and attention, where we're going to put it. And so being able to focus on that top 20%, the top tier evangelists, advocates, champions, fans, there's so many great words for these particular donors, but really making sure your effort is going into them because they're going to have such a greater return on your time and attention as well. Some of you may not know, but the book before the one you're holding, one of the books I published is called Attention Pays. And so one of the things I talk about in Attention Pays is, have you heard this idea that our attention span is declining? Have you all heard that? Rubbish. It's not. That's not true. There's no science for that. But what there is this thing that our attention span is split. And so is our donors. Everybody wants access to their bank account, to their time, to their attention. And I think the exceptional experience we deliver allows us to capture that attention and keep to stay top of mind. So in the book, we talk about being able to be top of mind, top of market. And so what I'd love to do is just to talk now really about this idea of how do we differentiate ourselves? We've already touched a little bit on personalization, so I'd like to dig into that a little bit more. When I think of attention, in an attention economy where attention is scarce right now and people are so distracted, I'm always reminded the best advice I ever got on attention was from my little 5-year-old friend. So my 5-year-old friend Donovan and I were in this heated debate. Have you ever debated with a 5-year-old? I know I sound like I'm 5, but literally the two of us were debating who's cooler. Is it Superman or Batman? This is a very important conversation we were having. But he was getting really frustrated with me because every time I asked a question, I would answer. He asked, I answered, but he didn't think I was paying attention. He got so mad at me, he jumped in my lap, he grabbed my face in his tiny little hands, he turned it towards him and he said this, "Neen, listen with your eyes." And it took a 5-year-old to remind me we don't just listen with our ears, we listen with our heart, we listen with our soul. And our donors, we need to listen with our eyes more in order for us to get to see them, to hear them, to make them feel seen, heard, and valued. If there's a stealth message in this book, just between us, It's how do you make people feel seen, heard, and valued? That's what the book's really about. And so I'd love to direct our conversation now. I have some questions for you around this idea of personalization. So what do you think the role is of personalization in developing trust, to build on our last speaker, but also in the role of your organization?
You were an amazing storyteller. Oh my God. You should
Aw,
write a book, honestly.
thanks. We're going to keep him. I like him.
Okay, so
Trevor.
personalization. Personalization. So I actually think, yes, personalization is important. At the top of an email addressed to you, yes. But I will back up maybe a couple years and say, at the Trevor Project, we did donor audience research, we did audience profiles, and we got to better understand, say, like what a typical donor might be, what a typical younger person might be, and we design these profiles with attributes associated to them, right? So Ben, who is newly out of college, maybe 23, first job, can afford to give $5, $10 a year, really likes Spotify, pays attention to certain news sources, whatever that is. So us appearing in certain places to appease to Ben, building trust.
Nice.
Sandra, who is a little older, really subscribes to the New York Times, listens to NPR, retired, more time and money on her hands. We show up where Sandra shows up, builds trust in a different way, different type of credibility. And when we're talking about trust, I would just go so far as to say trust is not starting when you think you are starting. It is a goodwill bank that you make deposits in along the way. So when you were founded to now, please keep depositing goodwill into the goodwill bank. You're depositing basically, you're investing in trust. And the more that you can show up with goodwill among your audiences, they will feel that personalization because you will be showing up where they are.
Yeah, I love the idea of avatars or, in marketing speak, but having the opportunity to really profile each of the type of people, the donors that you are wanting to be able to target for your conversations. Because when you have that really clear picture, it's you're speaking to that one person because you know them so intimately. And really, maybe back to your point about the top 20%, having an opportunity to spend time with them, to focus group with them, to understand them so you can create these briefs. It makes your team's job so much easier about personalization too, because they know exactly who they're talking to. I love that. What about you?
Yeah, so I'm probably a marker anomaly because I don't like personas, at least in the way that we are using them.
Okay,
right?
tell us more.
So I think all of us have dealt one time or another, whether you're a fundraiser or marketer, with like, who am I talking to? And I loved, actually, there was an Instagram post, a meme rather, a while back that I screenshotted because it was defining two identical profiles. 50-year-old woman, British, loves Barber, the jacket, right? Loves luxury, whatever. And there was like this regular person, and then there was like the princess. So like clearly the level of audience intelligence we're using today is not enough. And we know instinctively how different it is to do mass market fundraising or marketing versus the one-on-one relationship that our development frontline fundraisers have. The difference is that they get to know the donor, they get to understand, they remember their daughter or son's name, they remember what schools they go to. That is relationship. So to your point, personalization and customization needs to depend on how much we know the audience. And to your point about vision and the six senses, right?
Yeah.
We have to look donor in the eye and say, I see you.
Yeah.
If we don't get, as donors or customers or consumers for that matter, that sense that we are seen and that we matter, you're not going to have personalization. So the real name of the game, practically speaking, is, does our organization have the right investment in the data infrastructure to actually do composite profiling, not just the persona? That's what I'm against. I'm against the traditional agency persona, right? Which is basically only demographics that narrow from 350 million to maybe 190 million.
Right.
And that is the job of a marketer today, I think. And we have all the tools at our disposal, but it's not just to become data nerds, it's to actually create an experience that is tailored, even in the mass market when we have the one-to-many relationship problem.
Yeah, I agree. In the book, I say that personalization requires information, customization creates connection, but anticipation requires fascination. And I think we have to be fascinated with our donors. We have to be so fascinated about how they think, what they care about. How are we going to create the stories they need to hear in order to have that deeper emotional connection so they want to invest in us? And I talk about storytelling as one of the systems of elevation in the book. And an origin story is one of the most powerful ones you can tell. You talked about the origin story of the National MS Society. Being able to tell us why it's so important to you, that's what people connect to. That's when they start to open up and their hearts open up, as do their bank balances, which is great for us. So let's talk about the role of storytelling. You mentioned storytelling. I know we hear about storytelling all the time and how important it is and the formulas around it. But I'd love your insights in how you're both using storytelling with your elevation of the donor experience and how you're upskilling your team to tell stories as well.
So we work with a celebrity named Daniel Radcliffe. He played Harry Potter. And Harry, I almost called him Harry. Daniel,
That's contagious to
yeah,
me, apparently.
you got me. So Daniel has been a supporter of the Trevor Project for many years. And since I joined, he has been there saying, I would like to do more. What can I do this year? How can I help? And so there's this passion that Daniel has that, if your nonprofit works with celebrities, you may not always see among the celebrity cohort. But he has come to us and recently said, I want to do more. And maybe about a year ago, he sat down with several transgender and non-binary children, kids. We're talking about, teenagers, young adults. And he truly just asked a few questions, listened. He did not say, but what about? Or, well, I thought, or my experience was. It actually was just like a few questions. And he listened to those trans kids. And we filmed it. Production is production, editing, fast forward to when it's actually released. And what do you know? The humanization, the storytelling, narrativizing around trans kids' own experiences, that actually is what changes hearts and minds. It's not, Daniel's name helps get something out there, but it's not Daniel saying, well, actually, this is what is the truth about trans kids. It's him saying, well, I'm curious. What about this experience for you? And so for the general public, you might assume that trans people make up such a small part of the population. And so is it possible that very many people don't know a trans person or don't think that they know an openly trans person and identify with their experience? That is absolutely possible. But what can transcend something like that is storytelling, making sure that we're getting trans people to share their own experiences and elevating that on platforms that only voices like Daniel Radcliffe's can help elevate.
He was great in Broadway too. Fantastic.
For me, the truth is that we cannot escape our brain. And our brain works in two dimensions simultaneously, right? So there's the rational and there's the emotional. And, we had Michael up here talking about a lot of things that our donors perceived, what I call hygiene factors, right? That's the rational thing. Am I about to engage in an organization that actually delivers impact? Is it a trustworthy organization? Those are all rational things. So how do we deliver the emotional payload? And I think storytelling allows us, when done properly, to do both. So to fulfill the demand of our brain, however primitive it is, right? To actually understand both why I should be in it and what am I supporting. And so I think good storytelling is not just playing at the heartstrings, it's a balance, right? So I always tell my teams, content needs to have a purpose, right?
Yeah.
Which is different depending on the audience you're talking to, because to the
That.
point about personalization, different folks have different affinity with our mission and require a different approach to storytelling. So while some storytelling, like for example, heritage story or the origin story, is so important because it sets the scene, and that can be universal.
Right.
How do we then use that data that we're talking about to create different types of stories for different type of audiences, but always really thinking about, am I hitting the rational? Am I hitting the emotional? Is this something that's going to be memorable? And it advances the loyalty to the mission.
I love that. And just to build on that, when I work with a lot of global luxury and legacy CEOs and their teams, and one of the things that I work with them on is their thought leadership. And how do you elevate the thinking and people that are your community, in this case, your donors? And to build on what you're just saying, one of the techniques that I teach in thought leadership is we know we have the right and the left hemisphere of our brain. If we think about the left hemisphere of our brain, which is the rational, and what that brain loves is contextual models. So if you have a visual story to tell in a model, the people in the audience who are big picture love those contextual models. So using contextual models is really powerful. But a shortcut for storytelling for the right hemisphere of your brain is using metaphor. You see, metaphors are memorable and repeatable. If you can take your experience and create a metaphor for it, it will allow the message to have a ripple effect across the conversations. It's a shortcut. It's coding your brain in a different way. One of the metaphors we use in the book is, I don't know, we were talking about hotels earlier. How many of you love like a good bellhop? Anybody? Just me? Ladies? Yes, a great bellhop. We love a bellhop. A bellhop moves bags. Their job is efficiency. They're going to move those bags up into your room as quickly as possible. It's a transaction for them, and it's a vital role. I think too often, though, we're thinking like bellhops. We're crossing things off our list. We're trying to do those email campaigns. We're trying to do calls. We're just crossing things off. We're running from one meeting to the next. We're trying to get to the bottom of our inbox. Many of us are thinking like a bellhop. But when you look at a hotel, one of the most revered positions in a hotel, and one of my favorites, is the concierge. Because the concierge is the go-to person. That's the person everyone gravitates to. They know all of the secrets around the community. They can get you that table at that fabulous restaurant that now I want to go to. But the concierge, what's really powerful about the concierge, they anticipate needs you didn't even know you had. And what I want us to be challenged about today is I want you to think like a concierge, not a bellhop. A bellhop is transactional, efficient, and important. A concierge is transformational. And if you want to transform the donor experience, we need to start thinking like a concierge. You all said some of your favorite takeaways from yesterday, you told me, was to think bigger. That requires us to think like a concierge. So storytelling, a shortcut, is speak in metaphor. Like, did you see what I just did there? Yeah, okay. I want to talk about rituals. I want to talk about, to build on this from all of our conversation, one of the things that you hear this term all the time, surprise and delight, right? But what does that actually mean? And in the customer user experience, in the donor experience, I would love to explore some opportunities to make it repeatable, to create these repeatable moments so that we can deepen our experiences. In the book, I'm a champagne lover. There's even like a muselet on the front cover, so you'll get to know my love of champagne. But one of the things that I talk about in the book is creating champagne moments. Now, it can be a literal champagne moment. Maybe it's sparkling water for you if you're not a drinker. But a champagne moment is just something that takes the ordinary and makes it extraordinary. Something that makes you smile, something that brings you joy. For some of you, it might be sipping your matcha and taking a little bit longer in the morning, or meditating a little longer, or playing with a furry baby. So every one of us has champagne moments. My challenge to you today is find a champagne moment. You can tag me on it, hashtag champagne moments. Lots of people do, because I would be delighted to share it. But I want us to think in champagne moments, these opportunities to identify these great things. But I would also love to have your insight in how we make this repeatable. So I want to know, what are some of those repeatable moments or experiences that you are using in your organizations that we can all learn from?
This is an easy one for me because the Trevor Project has a research team. And we have an embarrassment of riches with our research team because they are uniquely pumping out this research around LGBTQ plus youth mental health. Very few people are doing this. The CDC is doing it, but not to the extent that we are. And also, they're controlled by the government that's limiting that type of research right now. So the research itself, on its face, LGBTQ plus youth mental health. But we also know that there are contributing factors to mental health disparities, and that could be intersectional identities. And so the research around, I'll give a specific example, Black LGBTQ plus youth mental health, Black LGBTQ plus young people may be at higher risk for negative mental health outcomes. We're talking about anxiety, depression, all the way up to suicidality. And so how do we make something like this a repeatable moment where we're, yes, publishing this research brief, maybe we're getting press on it, maybe we're talking about it on LinkedIn, and that does matter. And how do we maybe turn it into a champagne moment, or how do we make it short code for, or metaphorize it?
Metaphor, yeah.
We
That's
might
a word, metaphorize?
I made it up.
I love this word. I'm taking it.
It's
Just-
storytelling.
yeah.
You can do it.
Metaphorize. I'm writing that down.
So something that we,
fancy.
thank you. We're all fancy up here.
Apparently.
Something that we've taken to doing is making sure that whatever the research is, we're humanizing it in a storytelling manner that's relatable to the audience that we want to hear it. So if we know that, for instance, if there is a need for Black LGBTQ plus young people to connect with our crisis services, we might work with certain creators, we might honor a certain celebrity so that we are seen among a certain audience. Black LGBTQ plus young people, for instance, in 2021, we honored Lil Nas X as our first, back then the award was called Suicide Prevention Advocate of the Year. And he was having a meteoric rise, and he received this honor from us. And we saw consistently that approximately a third of our crisis contacts identified as Black LGBTQ plus young people.
Wow. Before I hear your answer, I just want to pull out something that you said as a takeaway for all of us. And that is, if for those of you who are publishing research, it's a fantastic, repeatable resource, but make it so easy for people. Make sure you create the content, the visuals, the digital assets of those important numbers that people can then share. You make your donors look smart, you make it easy on social media. So you need to also, don't just send someone the white paper or the research summary, make it so easy for them so you curate the story in those visual assets so that makes it easy for everybody. What about you?
I love the champagne moment.
I'm glad.
In my household, we have a bowl that we ask our children when they can to put a little piece of paper in it. And it's either gratitude or a little moment of joy.
I love that.
I think we have to be trained to see joy and happiness and exceptionality, because otherwise in this whirlwind of a world, we might miss it. I think what we can and should learn from luxury is the training that it goes into create exceptionality.
Right.
So as consumers, everyday consumers, we are trained to expect what is already given to us by the Amazons of the world. So for example, in retail, 15, 20 years ago, there was not really a widespread expectations of instant delivery of goods. Now it is a universal expectation. So I think when we're talking about delight, we're talking about in comparison to what is the current standard expectation set, not by the nonprofit industry, by the industry at large. And so I think that is where we need to understand, and I'm sure that we'll talk about friction, we should be talking about friction and desire, but that is something that we can take from luxury.
Yeah.
Expecting not just necessarily always the very well-crafted experience, even the little moments. We know it instinctively when we walk down the street and a stranger smiles at us. That does something, right? Or when our boss gives us a word of encouragement or praise. Those are very meaningful moments we should put in that bowl.
I love that.
But the problem is that we don't systematize. So again, it's about creating a consistent string of delight.
Yes.
Comparing to the expectation set. And so how do we systematize it? We have to be intentional about that. So we have to look at the user journeys. We have to look at the different type of segments and understand where is appropriate to automate. There's not a bad thing to do, but automate with thoughtfulness. We know, for example, a lot of organizations are using handwritten notes. Whether it's a handwritten or it's an auto pen, we don't know.
Some of the technology now is so good, though, people don't always know the difference.
But I can tell you, you all know how important it is for a donor, whether it's a $25 donor or a $25,000 donor, to receive a handwritten note.
Yes.
That is a small moment of delight that you don't get from the Amazons of the world. And so we still have a window where we can capitalize on the intentional, systemic design for exceptionality.
What I call systemized thoughtfulness, what we were referring to before. I carry stamped stationery with me everywhere I go because I have the privilege of traveling. Some people drive to work, I fly. It's the same thing, it's just a different form of commute. And so there's always a crew member, a hotel, a convention center, a meeting planner. There's so many opportunities to stop and write a thank you note to someone. And so we could all do that, is just to have that stamped stationery with us so we can write those notes when something does happen. In the book, we have the experience elevation model. So imagine a triangle. It's the 5 luxury levers. Do you say levers or levers here? Did someone say yes? I'm Australian. I get to say levers. I'm American too, but we're going to go with levers. The 5 luxury levers are to entice, invite, excite, delight, and ignite. So how do you capture attention? That's enticing, all the way through to igniting, to creating these advocates. You mentioned friction points, and one of the things I love about working with the Ritz is they have a process where you only enter your information once. Imagine if our donors only had to enter their information once. I was at a hotel the other day, and every time I opened my laptop, I had to type in my name and my room number. Champagne problems, by the way. But imagine how much easier it would be if it just remembered me. And I think from a donor experience, if we're going to look at what's not luxury, what does not feel like luxury to them, what feels like those conflict, those friction points you mentioned, that would be an easy one to look at. All right, I know that we're going to want some questions from the audience, so I want to ask you both one final question, if that's okay with you. And my final question is, if there is one idea you could leave this audience with today, what would that be? I'm going to start with you. Francesco?
Yeah, I think it's great that we came to this point, right? Because the other word that we have not really mentioned is value or value proposition. And I think what kind of kills me a little bit in the nonprofit coming from the for-profit is that we have this sometimes, not to generalize, we have the expectations that in the nonprofit we don't actually have to deliver value. And that again connects to the friction versus desire, right? We expect the desire to be very high and therefore the friction tolerance to be very high. That's not the case. And so I think my encouragement would be for all of us, put the donor at the center. If you want them to be seen and heard and feel special and uniquely relevant to your organization, it has to start with us showing up every day with the mentality that we actually care about the people that make our work possible.
Yeah.
Or just as companies care about the customers that, buy their products. We can't be brand centric in that sense. We can't expect that just because we have a great mission, and all of us do, that without any value exchange, and I'm not talking about transactional value, I'm talking about real comprehensive value, the people will come and stay. There's such an
Those lifelong
unreasonable
advocates.
expectation.
Yes.
So care about your donors, put them at the center, and get to know them, because otherwise all of this is not going to be able to be achieved.
Thank you. Kevin?
If I could leave you all with one thing, it would be that you, the nonprofit leader, or you, the brand representative, or you, the nonprofit as the brand, we're talking about loyalty and experience today. You're not the end all be all of that loyalty or experience. In fact, your staff, huge resources, your social platforms, the events that you have, the ways that people think about you, the ways that you collaborate with an influencer to a celebrity, all of those things help build those experiences, feelings, and sentiments of loyalty. And so hopefully you are accounting for all of those things and not just centralizing them into, say, like a brand experience.
I would add and remind everyone that the personalization is really key. Making people feel seen, heard, and valued by elevating all of the touch points. And if you can map every touch point that you have and make it an experiment with your team. And while we've got opportunities to learn from corporate, from nonprofit, from the luxury sector, travel, hospitality, an easy way to train your team is get them to mystery shop. Say, for example, a luxury brand. Give them some money, get them to go and buy a coffee and sit in a luxury hotel lobby. and ask them to report back on what they notice. The way that the staff hold themselves, the way they greet people, the sounds, the smells, the touch, the feel. And for the price of a cup of coffee in an expensive hotel, you're giving them this accelerated learning and development around personalization. So it's an easy way to mystery shop, but get them to come back with a different lens. Because remember, we want people to think like a concierge, not a bellhop. I know there's going to be a lot of questions in the audience. My request of you as you ask a question is to think about making your question big enough that we all benefit from the answer. If there are really specific questions you have for any of us, I would love you to come and see us afterwards. But as you're thinking about your question for any of the panelists, think about asking it in a way that we all get to benefit from the answer. Is that an okay deal with you? I would also love you, if you have a specific question for the panelists, please use their name, the right name, as you're directing your question as well. So I know, Tara, there's some microphones heading around. So by a show of hands, who has the first question for us today? I think it's over here, yeah?
Hi, everyone. My name is Juanita with Oxfam, and I absolutely love everything you say, and I agree. My question to you is, how do you get your digital team to get on board with this segmentation? We're talking about different experiences and personalization. A donor that comes through face-to-face is not the same as a donor that comes from digital. Yeah. And I hope I'm not the only one that has this issue of like trying to sell it internally, how we do need to segment and not talk to everyone the same way.
I love that question. Do either of you want to address that first?
I love how shady you are. Oh my God. Okay, so how we do things at the Trevor Project is taking a step back. It started by quarter, right? So we did quarterly planning, and then now we plan further in advance, best laid plans and all that. But something that has helped us do is see each other's plans more cohesively as one big plan. And something you might consider, I mean, Oxfam is huge. I'm sure you do something similar. But something that has helped us see is, okay, these are the pieces of the puzzle and how do they fit into each other? And digital strategy is one of those things where at a certain point, you're doing your own thing, you're building a brand, but also on the other side of that is you're an enablement function, right? So you're enabling other people or their teams to achieve their goals. So making an ecosystem together usually helps bring people together, and seeing the shared vision is what I would call it.
A practical example I saw, I was asked to speak about Versace when they did their fall collection last year, asked me to comment on their socials of what was happening. What they did geniusly is they pretty much went dark, and the only things they allowed people to see was their fall collection. So what some people are doing is kind of like blacking. In the old retail days, we'd black out the windows when we're going to put a new window display in. So it was that kind of concept. And what I'm noticing on Insta is they're using the highlights reel very carefully with particular names of certain segments. That's another way easily that I've noticed that some of the luxury brands are doing it anyway.
I would say quickly, I don't think that's a conversation that needs to be on the shoulders of the digital team. I think it's a CMO that needs to go to the CEO of the board and advocate for the right data infrastructure. There is no surprise that we struggle to find meaningful segmentation when we don't have the data at our fingertip, right? And so that's not a conversation for the digital team. What I would offer is that we have to really be advocates for the value about segmenting, because your digital team is just going to be happy and eager to have models that they can apply to automation or personalization. But it's a very tall hill to climb when you don't have the infrastructural investments.
Next question. Down here.
Yes, thank you so much for this. And I think the Fundraise Up team does an exceptional job at this, so I want to give them a shout out. But also, Kevin, when we've talked a lot about donors, I'm wondering if you have any additional or practical tips for how we can create exceptional experiences for volunteers as well, and potentially fundraisers too. I know Francesco at the National MS Society has a lot of fundraising events, so I'm just curious if you have any actionable tips for the audience.
Love that.
So we do have volunteers. We have volunteer crisis counselors. And at a certain point, we had in-person offices. LA and New York, a satellite in DC. And we would have contact centers where volunteers could mingle with staff. They could learn more about the work that we're doing on different departments, but also they would be invited to events. And so we would have volunteer specific events, but we would also be invited to, say, a partners event, and we would bring volunteers along with us. Or we would, if we had a gala, if we had some sort of fundraiser, how can a volunteer plug into that, if not just the typical shift that they were in for volunteer crisis counseling work? So I think all of those things revolve around, honestly, in-person capabilities, but finding those digital opportunities, whether it's participating in a staff meeting or meeting a certain leader at the organization. Maybe that's also participating in some of the recreational meetings or opportunities at the organization too, including professional development. All of those matter to a volunteer experience.
Can I build on that as well? As someone who serves on lots of boards and has volunteered to raise money and write the checks and do all the things, I think one of the things to consider with elevating the volunteer experience is give them the exclusive behind the scenes access. Let them get to talk to the people whose lives they're really impacting. Do things just for them. Like if you're at a restaurant, bring the chef out so that they can meet the chef. Like whatever is important to them, give them those experiences that they couldn't get somewhere else so that that deepens their emotional connection to the brand as well. But think about too, you don't have to be a luxury product to provide a luxury experience. That handwritten note from a board member that says, hey, we really appreciate your volunteerism and we see you and we hear you, that means the world to them. Don't overlook them when at the end of the event you just go, oh yeah, and thanks for all our volunteers. Let's make that more of a production, especially for people who really need that level of recognition as well. So I think that's another thing. Would you add any ideas for the question about volunteers?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, one of the highest predictor of lifetime value is volunteering, right? So we know this, right? Yet sometimes when we have events in person, maybe there's a staff that engages with volunteer and we treat them as bellhops, maybe.
Yeah.
And that's a missed opportunity. And I know it's difficult to reach out to many thousands of people, but when you are in an event, introduce yourself. I'm part of the staff. Thank you for what you're doing. And if we were talking before about stakeholders or feeling stakeholders and shareholders, right, this is what it means that you're part of it, And I think those meaningful engagements, which are obviously not replicable at scale, they really matter because volunteers are really the strong 20%. They already said that I'm going to show up on top of giving you money and attention. I'm showing up. This is very valuable. And so also amplify stories on digital about volunteers. That's an aspect that doesn't have to stay behind the scenes.
Yeah, I love that. Think too, sometimes people have more money than time. Sometimes they have more time than money. But being able to understand where your volunteers are at and what they have to be able to give and to personalize their journey and find out from them, like, what is it that you're really good at? What is it that you love? How do we engage that rather than just make everyone do the same thing? We have time for one final question from the room. Who has one final question for us? Do I assume you don't have any more questions?
Don't make it awkward for us here.
I do this professionally. I can wait you out. Okay, I saw a hand in the middle there.
Hi, my name is Dana from the National MS Society. Hi, Francesco. Personally have anxiety about bellhops because I never have cash and they're always, I feel like I need to tip them for helping me. Appreciate it though. So when I think of luxury, for me, I think of convenience. I think about a luxury to me is hiring a cleaning crew to come to my home. I weigh out the benefits, I weigh out my time, I weigh out, all of my other priorities, let's say, with what I'm giving my money to. But for me, it's a lot about convenience. And so can you elaborate on the convenience that you're providing to your donors and to the experience that they're having with your organization? I understand personalization, but I haven't heard the word convenience. And so I'm curious if you, and maybe someone from Fundraise Up wants to jump in on that answer, but, please, I don't know if I can elaborate on what my question is, but the word convenience, what does that mean to you?
So in our prep call, we were talking about brand equity a little bit. And when I think about the word convenience, what you just gave a specific example for yourself. Maybe many would agree with you. So your time, you have weighed that your time cleaning, you want to make an investment in a cleaning service, and that is valuable to you. That is convenience to you. I personally love cleaning my own apartment. And so I use that as an example of a differentiator, right? Like convenience to you might be different for me, right? Luxury for you might be different for me. So I bring up brand equity because brand perception plays into brand equity. Connecting those dots together, when I think about how people are viewing the organization that I work at, brand perception, one person's experience not being the same as another person's experience. So how are we providing different engagement points, touch points to experiences they care about, right? If I'm an Asian American gay man, is the organization publishing that type of research? Are they seeing me on their social media? And is that something that I, as someone who wants to be an advocate or a supporter, am conveniently being able to engage with, versus do I have to go dig for that thing? So making sure that people are seen, I think, is a form of convenience, and providing that, I won't say luxury experience, but experience for individualism.
But if luxury is time for people, which I think it is, for some people it is the luxury of time, getting your time back, having a service, doing those things. That's where I think what I love about Fundraise app is makes my life really easy. And luxury is ease, convenience, time for so many people. But if you can make it so easy, I don't know if you all were impacted, but as soon as like that one-click shopping happened, that's a problem for your credit cards. But imagine if we just make it so easy for people that it doesn't require extra thought, right? That is something we all need to be challenging and thinking about. It's like the Ritz with their one entry point for information. It is that luxury of ease and time and attention. Any final thought on convenience?
Yeah, I think you're what I understand your concept of convenience is a concept of frictionless, right? I think convenience luxury is almost inextricably linked to scarcity, right? You can have daily luxuries, or to your point, like if I'm a parent and I have 5 kids, as I happen to do, a luxury might be staying in a hotel room with my wife without the kids, right? Doesn't necessarily have to be expensive. So convenience often is associated with commodity markets, right? That's why we call them convenience store. But again, it's how we assign value, which is different, as Karen was saying, different from everybody. That is the convenience aspect of that. And make it easy. Again, on our website, there's no reason for us to have this high friction points for stuff that doesn't match the expectations that are set by other industries. So convenience as ease, yes. Convenience is the allocations of value that is personal, which may be very different. That's why segmentation and customizations are critical.
From the panel today, you have heard from for-profit, non-profit, luxury, legacy brands. We've had some key ideas around how do you elevate the experience for our donors and for our volunteers. Thank you for your great question. We've also talked about those touch points. It doesn't have to be expensive to be able to matter. And we've also talked about how do you differentiate yourself and your organization through techniques like storytelling, using metaphor, sharing your origin, being able to leverage the brilliance of the people that you have on your team. I have the only research study in the world into luxury as a mindset, which you can see in the book. But what it does do is it unpacks 4 different mindsets that I'd love you to consider for the donors and their experience as well. We have an assessment you can do to discover even your own. Has today been valuable for you? Did you get some ideas in the last hour you can apply? Well, please thank my panelists for this great experience and Fundraise Up. Sal, we're going to hand back over to you. Thank you all.